In today's video, we look at everything you need to know to get started with Scratch. This is another flipped classroom tutorials. Now before we get into it, if you like these tech videos, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get notified of any future videos. Now today is going to be a slightly longer video and we are going to walk you through all the steps needed to set up your Scratch and get started on programming with your students. So go ahead and navigate to the Scratch website, which is scratch.mit.edu. Now you can find that website in the description below, as well as timestamps to each individual part of this video. Now, if this is your very first time with Scratch, go ahead and click on the Join Scratch button. Now once you've clicked on that, you are going to be requested to choose a Scratch username and a password. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to select EduFlip as my username, and I'm going to select a password, which is going to be kept secure. Now, once you've completed that, you will be asked for your birth month, year, gender, and country. So go ahead and fill all of that out. And on the following page, you will be asked to enter an email address. Now, this email address is to confirm your account. So go ahead and confirm that account right now. And then you can either tick or untick the box that says receive updates. Now I would highly recommend that you turn this on because the updates sent to your inbox are kept at an absolute minimum and they are always great tips and tricks. Now, welcome to Scratch EduFlip. I still have to open up the confirmation email in order for me to be able to share and comment projects. So go ahead and open up your inbox and confirm that email. Now you can see here I'm in my email. It says welcome to Scratch, greetings from the Scratch team at MIT, and then simply click on confirm my email address. And there we go, we are now logged in and confirmed. Now the first thing you need to understand is that Scratch is much more than just a platform. It's also an online community. Now when you go to the online community, you can either learn how to make some projects, you can find some started demo projects and play around with those, or you can connect with other people that have created projects. Now for the sake of this demonstration and overview, we are going to start by clicking on the Create tab. Now the Create tab is going to take you to your own project. Now this is your very first project, and as you can see it says Untitled and nothing has been done yet. Now before you do anything, I'd like you to click on your name in the top right corner and click on My Stuff. Now My Stuff, this brings you to an overview of all your previously created projects. Now you can always access this by clicking on your name and going to My Stuff. Now you also have a profile button, and this allows you to add more information about yourself. Now here you will find all your untitled projects. So every single time you click on that Create button, you will create a new untitled project. So let's go ahead and call this My First Project. Now, important to understand about Scratch is the way this platform works. Now, when you look at the workspace given to you, there are three main elements. Now, the first element here is your preview window. Now, when you click on the icon on the top left corner, you'll maximize your game, and then you can minimize it again. Now, this is where you can see your game in action. Here you have your green flag to play the game and your red flag to stop it. Now when I press this green flag and nothing happens because we have not yet coded anything in our project area. Now the project area has three parts: scripts, costumes, and sounds. For now we're going to stick to scripts. And this is where you can find your different coding blocks. Now these blocks will click together like Legos and they will all act and work together to run the code needed for you to execute a program. Down below we have our overview. Now in this overview you will see there are two parts. There is the stage or backdrop and there are the sprites. Now the sprites are the little elements that you can move around your screen. The backdrop is what appears in the back, and these each have their own project page that you can add code to. So let's go ahead and add our own background now. Now there's a number of options. We can either use a backdrop from the library, we can paint a new backdrop, we can upload an image as our backdrop, or we can take a photograph from our camera. Now this is great for those Chromebooks that have cameras that are world facing. Now let's go ahead and select a backdrop from the library. Now here you can see there's a huge library of backdrops, and again there's also different themes. Now for the sake of our demonstration, I'm going to go with the space theme, and I'm just going to select the black backdrop with stars. There we go, we now have our backdrop. I can go back to my sprite, and as you can see I can move my sprite around my backdrop and leave it wherever I want it to be. Now the scripts, these all relate to my sprite, because as you can see the sprite is highlighted. When I highlight my backdrop, all the code coded here now will be in relation to my backdrop. So that's very important to understand, that whatever you code needs to be in the correct project window, either the sprite or backdrop. Let's go ahead and select our first sprite. Now we can add multiple sprites, and again each sprite will have their own code. So let's go ahead and add a sprite from the library. And we already have Scritch there, so let's go to our space topic. Let's add Pico. And let's add another sprite. So go ahead and choose Sprite, go back to the space topic, and let's add Giga. Now these are two built-in sprites, so let's move these around. There we go. And we are going to delete the default sprite. Now the way you can do that is by simply right-clicking on this sprite and selecting delete. Okay, so we now have three areas where we can add coding blocks. We can add them to the stage, we can add them to our sprite Pico, and we can add them to Giga. Now in addition to using sprites from the library, you can also paint your own sprites. So go ahead and click on Paint New Sprite. And important to note here is that there are two different painting modes. Now the mode I am in now, by looking at the bottom, is the Bitmap mode. The Bitmap mode is where you draw shapes and you can easily add and delete areas of these shapes. However, when I add a fill color, each individual pixel will get a color. Now I do recommend when using bitmaps that you make sure that your images look exactly the way you want them to look. Because one of the downsides of using bitmap is that you cannot enlarge the image without pixelation. This is our bitmap image. We can go ahead and delete this image. And we can also switch to vector mode. Now when you are in vector mode, you are going to draw lots of shapes, and these shapes are going to be vector shapes, which means that you can resize them to any size you like and they will not pixelate. So go ahead and draw a vector shape and add a fill to this vector. There we go. And you will see that when I now highlight this shape, I can enlarge it and my image will not pixelate in my game. There we go. I have a crisp, nice and clear image. So I would highly recommend that when possible, use vector shapes above bitmap shapes, because they will just allow your students to create games that do not end up looking pixelated. Another very important thing to note, when you are drawing and creating your own shapes, you need to make sure that the center of your shape is also the center of your image. The reason for that is when you start coding movements into your shape, the center will act as the center that is used for all the coordinations. So whenever you're drawing a shape, remind your students of zooming in so they can see the center point of their shape and also the center point of their costume. Once they've gotten used to using the center as a starting point for their drawings, then any of the code added later should not be a problem. Okay, now I'm going to leave this shape on my canvas and I'm going to go back to scripts. Now what you will see here is I now have 3 sprites and one backdrop. So let's go ahead and add our very first code. Time to code, so go ahead and select events. And the first event we're going to code is when this green flag is clicked, something is going to happen to our friend Pico. Now what Pico is going to do, Pico is going to move, and he is going to move 50 steps. Now this is going to happen every single time that green flag is clicked. Now we're also going to add that same code to our friend Gika. Now when I click on the event of a green flag being clicked, Gika is also going to move 50 steps, but she is not going to move 50 steps to the right. She is going to move minus 50 steps. Now minus 50 steps means that she is going to go left 50 steps. So you need to look at this canvas as an X and Y valued screen. So whenever you're adding steps, you are going right. And now whenever you're taking away steps, you are going left. So let's go ahead and test this. When I click on this green flag, there we go, my two characters have moved. Now I'm going to move these a little bit more to the center of my screen. And we're going to test this one more time. So when I click on this green flag, they move 50 steps. Okay, now ideally I would have a reset button. Now I'm going to use my Sprite 1, the vector image that I've drawn, as a reset button. So whenever I click on this button, I am going to reset the sprite's position. So how do I do that? Well, very easy. I'm going to select the event, and I'm going to say when this sprite is clicked, I'm going to shout out a message. Now the broadcast message, here we're going to shout out and we're going to add a new message. Now the new message we're shouting out is going to be reset. So whenever I press the green flag, my sprites are going to be moving. And whenever I press the sprite, I am going to broadcast a message. And the message is going to shout to everything on my screen, reset! Now my sprites obviously do not have the code to listen to that message yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay in our events and we are going to select when I receive reset. And when I receive reset, I'm going to move to a specific position. So go ahead and select that position and find the X and Y values that you would like to use for your sprite. Now here I want to use X 60 and Y minus 75 for my friend Pico. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the motion tab, go to X, which was 60, and Y, which was minus 75. I'm going to do a very similar thing for my Gika character. Now I'm going to move Gika to minus 80 and use the same Y value so that she is on the same line. So what we are going to do here is, again, we are going to select the when I receive reset. I am going to move to minus 80 and minus 75. Now when you're coding with your students, make sure they all have a notepad or a little piece of paper, a scrap paper, that they can simply jot down their coordinates. That will save them a lot of time finding them later on. So let's go ahead and test our code. Now what we've coded so far is whenever this sprite Pico hears the green flag, it's going to move 50 steps. However, when it receives the message reset, it goes back to its starting position. Gika is the same. Gika is going to move minus 50 steps. When she hears the words reset, she is going to go back to her starting position. Now when the sprite is clicked, the circle, then it is actually going to shout out the message reset. So let's go ahead and test this full screen. When I click on the green flag, my sprites move, they move yet again. However, when I click on my sprite, my characters return to their starting positions. Let's do that again. They move, 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 move. They are off canvas now. When I click on this sprite, they return to their starting positions. Now, as you can see, these two characters are slightly off-centered. Now, the reason for that is in their design. So when you go to Pico, and you open up the costume, you will see that Pico is not centered the same way Gika is. So let's select everything on Pico's costume and let's move him up so his feet touch the center of our sprite. Now let's do the same thing with Gika. Let's select every part of Gika and let's move her up so her feet touch the center of my sprite. Now this way they are both at the same height. So let's go ahead and test this one more time. Open up in full screen, press the green flag to move them, and let's press this big red circle to reset. There we go. Let's do this one more time. Let's move them, and let's press this circle to reset. Now as you can see, they are now on the same line, and this is the reason that I said it is very important for you to mention to the students that that center point of your sprite is very important to keep in mind when designing. But let's go ahead and add some code to our backdrop. Now what we're going to add to our backdrop is an event that whenever the green flag is clicked, we're going to do something with that backdrop. We're going to change the look of the backdrop. So what we are going to do is we are going to change the color effect by 25 value points. So what that does is it's going to change this. Now what that's going to do is it's going to change the background's color by 25 value points. Now I am going to also add another effect, and that is going to be when you hear the reset, and this is now for the backdrop, so when my backdrop hears the reset, I am going to clear all graphic effects. So this is going to get rid of the color changes. So let's go ahead and test this. When I click the green flag, my characters move and the backdrop changes by 25 value points. When I click on the big red circle, it returns to normal. Now you can also change either the pixelation, fisheye effects, whirl effects, brightness, or go for ghost mode. So let's go with brightness and let's change the brightness with 70 points. Let's test this. We press the green flag. There we go, it goes white. Press the red circle and it returns to normal. So these are your first important steps. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some input. Now the input we're going to add is coming from our keyboard. So as of now, our game only responds to clicking. Now we want some keyboard input. So what we're going to do is under the events, we're going to select when the space key is pressed. Now this can be any key, so you have a drop-down menu here. It could be any of your keys. Now we're going to keep it at space. When the space key is pressed, we are going to sound a sound. Now the sounds are already here. We have one example sound, which is a pop sound. I'm going to just let you hear that. There we go. So whenever I press that space bar, I want to hear that sound. So let's go back to our scripts. When the space key is pressed, I'm going to select sounds and I'm going to play the sound pop. Here we can select play pop. So let's go ahead and test that. We have our sprites that move, backdrop that changes, reset button, and we can press the space bar to make a pop sound. There we go. Now, using these different effects, you can already start thinking about animations you can create or anything really you can come up with. Now let's go back to our sprite 1, which is this beautiful big circle, and we are going to add some more code to this. Now we're going to go back to this big round sprite, and what we're going to do is when the green flag is pressed, we are going to actually move this sprite down and then back up into place. The way you can do that is by using a glide motion. So go ahead and go to motion and let's add 2 lines of code. Now the starting position is up here and we are going to glide downwards. So we're going to glide for, let's say, 3 seconds, and we're going to leave the X value where it is because that's the horizontal axis. Now we are going to change the Y value. Now right now the Y value is at 93. We are going to move it all the way down to minus 130, and then we're going to go back up to 93. So we're going to select this, we're going to go to minus 130 on the Y value, and now we're going to duplicate this block. So the way we do that is right clicking, duplicate the block. There we go, just click it back in, and now we're going to return this value to the original 93. So let's go ahead and test this. When I press this green flag, our circle glides down and then it glides back up to its starting position. Now, if I wanted this to carry on until the reset button is clicked, I would add a control block called forever. Now go ahead and select your forever block, and we're going to place this over our two glide statements. Now this means whenever the green flag is clicked, forever it's going to glide down, back up, until it is actually pressed. So let's go ahead and test that. I'm going to go here. We're going to press this to reset everything to the starting positions. Press the green flag. Characters move, block starts moving. I now have to try and click on this, so I'm going to click on it, and there we go. It resets. Now as you can see, it still moves because I have not added any code that tells this block to stop moving. The next thing we need to add is when I receive my reset broadcast, I am going to stop all scripts, which is going to be down here, stop all. So let's go ahead and test this. We're going to open up, going to press the green flag, which is going to start gliding. It moves the characters, and as soon as I press reset, everything stops. Now this has just been a beginner's overview of what is possible in Scratch. Now I will be making a lot more tutorials that are a slightly longer form, showing you many of the different concepts that can be found in Scratch. I hope you found this helpful. Don't forget, you can leave all your questions in the comment section below. And just as a quick recap, you can look in the description and find timestamps to each of the individual items and elements we've discussed today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.